So, you want to be a DM? I'm so smooth. If that's not a reason to subscribe, get out. Anyway, maybe you have a copy of the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide. Maybe you're thinking about it. Who knows? Excellent. If you're new to D&D, then this one is for you. The 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide for 5e is kind of notorious for being pretty weak when it comes to practical advice for Dungeon Masters, which makes perfect sense. Meaning that if you were wanting to DM your first game, it actually wasn't that helpful unless you needed information about magic items. I digress. This new, shiny version, however, though, is honestly way better at setting you up to run the kind of D&D games everyone wants these days. You know, story-heavy, epic fantasy adventures, tons of monster battles. It's the reason so many people became interested in D&D, particularly after Eddie What's-His-Face from Stranger Things made it all cool. Nod to you, Eddie, although I can't remember your last name. The critic in me still wants to complain that D&D just puts way too much emphasis on combat. People who really care about storytelling could probably find a way better system, but that's not what this video is for. Let's be real. D&D, it is like the RPG, kind of like how World of Warcraft was, maybe still kind of is, the MMO. Pretty much everyone's playing it anyway. Even one-shots seem to be more popular than ever now. So this guide is really useful for those too. You will get, before I start this video, because I know you are right there, a die-hard Dungeon Master cursing me right now, telling me this includes way too much canon, it's too tailored to beginners and not dungeon masters, but for me it's an improvement. It's a really great tool at getting over those hurdles for your first campaign, so curse is back to you. There you have it. You're thinking about it, maybe you've already got it, maybe it's in your basket, you want to buy it, you just don't know how to use it. Let's go. That was never going to happen twice and it just did. I'm so smooth. I'm not going to go into detail on chapters 1 and 2 because they're essentially just homework chapters. They're going to introduce you step by step to all of the basics, from gaming etiquette to travel, even miniatures and narration. You'll probably read these chapters, whack out your notebook, make some notes, like that gif from The Office. Anyway, and then you're going to forget you wrote those notes, but it's a cool homework assignment and it's a great intro. I'm going to start obviously with chapter 3 as it comes after 1 and 2. Did you know that? The Toolbox chapter, it's probably the most scattered section. It bounces between mechanical stuff like traps and hazards and then general DM advice. The mechanical bits themselves are actually pretty solid. There's plenty of cool stuff that you can throw into your game to spice up your exploration. So in that sense, it's a useful tool. So for example, a suspended cauldron. Let me turn to the page I saved earlier to delight you with this example. 97, I believe it was. If it's not, we'll just read something different. Here we go, suspended cauldron. For example, an iron pot is suspended so that it can be tipped easily, spilling its contents. Once emptied, a cauldron must be refilled before it can be used again. Filling the cauldron requires 3 utilized actions, then a crew member can take the spill action. Cauldrons are typically filled with boiling oil, but can be filled with other substances such as acid or green slime, see hazards in this chapter, with different effects. And then it's got all of the stats you need if you're incorporating something like a suspended cauldron into your campaign. Let's continue. A big chunk of this section, it focuses on custom backgrounds for characters, which kind of, I don't really think it's in the right place. It should be in the player's handbook, especially since stats are now kind of tied directly to backgrounds. Players, they're naturally going to want to customize their characters more, so putting it in this chapter, it kind of feels like a weird place for it to be and not really necessary, but there are some really easy to follow rules for making magic items and spells, and there's also very brief rules on how to make monsters, but obviously if you want to dabble in monstercraft, the monster manual is going to be the one for you. I'm happy to break that down for you in another video if it's of interest to you. If not, then we'll just move on. What you do have though is all the stats you need, from everything from making NPCs to even like random items like doors. So this chapter is one that you probably want to bookmark because you're going to be referencing it a lot, particularly because you're probably going to find yourself saying, I want to include some explosives and alien technology. Yes, They are both in there. What stats do I need? Well, let me turn to chapter 3. But honestly, the real standout here, it's the section on death rules, the solid advice about how to deal with stuff like total party annihilation. But the part about you've got death scenes, I want to share it with you because it is absolute gold. And I'm stealing it for my own games. And I'm going to read it to you now. Page 63. If you're following along at home, let's go. Death. What did I say? Rules. No, I didn't. Death scenes. Here we go. When a character is reduced to 0 hit points, the player sometimes has to sit out 1 or more rounds of combat with nothing to do but roll death saving throws. Insert evil DM genius laugh. One way to keep a player involved in the game is to prompt some role-playing along with each death save. You might ask the player to describe a memory that surfaces in the character's mind while hovering near death. Consider these possibilities. On a successful death save, a memory that inspires hope and courage, a beloved person who would urge the character to cling to life, a thought of something to live for, a favourite childhood memory, for example. On a failed death save, a memory that stirs up shame or grief, a beloved person who is already dead, beckoning the character to join them, an experience of weariness or despair. You can also reward a player who describes a memory or something else occupying the dying character's thought with advantage on the death save. When a character dies, either from failed death saves or from an effect that kills the character outright, consider giving the player some ownership over that character's final moments by asking what the character's last words are or how that character intends to greet death. Oh, so good. Basically what we're looking at here is the idea that when a character is about to die, you have the player, like I read, describe that key memory, a proud one if they succeed, or something they're ashamed of if they fail, and then you reward them with advantage if they really commit to it. It's a really smart way to blend mechanics with storytelling, encouraging role-playing in a way the rest of the book it doesn't quite nail as effectively. So with this in mind, we're now going on an adventure. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge to you, Bilbo Baggins. Chapter 4, Creating Adventures. This chapter, it's gold dust. If you're focusing, why am I gold dust a lot today? If you're focusing on one-shots in particular, or obviously looking to incorporate adventures within your campaign, why would you not? This is where you get 4 clear steps to build an adventure. Things like figuring out your premise, grabbing your player's attention with a good hook, planning encounters, and then knowing how to wrap things up. But what's great here is sort of like the rest of the chapter, it just keeps diving deeper and it fleshes out these simple steps with genuinely solid advice. There's a lot of tables of information, which is helpful for new DMs. I know the tables are annoying people. I do not know why. You get something like 20 adventure ideas per 5 character levels. It's definitely enough to kickstart your imagination. So let me kick it for you. I'm sure there's a song about kicking it, but can I remember? Probably not. Right, so it says, whether you're creating your own adventures or using published ones, this chapter helps you create fun and memorable experiences for your players. It involves blending scenes of exploration, interaction, and combat into a unified role that meets the needs of your players. Yada, yada, yada. Step-by-step adventures. Here are your 4 steps. Step 1, lay out the premise. Determine the situational conflict that underscores the adventure. Think about the adventure's setting and what is unique and fun about it. Step 2, draw in those players. Think about how the characters will get drawn into the situation you've established. Consider how the adventure might tie in with the character's goals. Step 3, plan your encounters. Determine the encounters of events that take the characters from the beginning of an adventure right the way to the end. And then step 4, bring it all to an end. How do you expect the adventure will end? Think about the possible endings as well as rewards for the characters. The rest of this chapter offers inspiration and advice for each of these 4 steps. There's a really cool section on adventure hooks, and I really want to share one with you, so I'm just going to find it because it was like a level 20 hook, and it was really interesting. Here we go. Basically, it offers different ways to sort of pitch the adventure, to grasp the attention of your players. 5 ancient metallic dragons lair in the pillars of creation. If all these dragons are killed, the world will collapse into chaos. 1 has just been slain. Dun, dun, dun. It's just cool. The adventure hooks themselves, they get divided into categories like patrons, happenstance, and supernatural stuff. For combat encounters, it uses an XP budget system just to help you balance things out. But instead of forcing new DMs to figure out exactly how multiple enemies might interact, it gives you a helpful troubleshooting section that I will find now. Here we go. When creating and running combat encounters, keep the following in mind. Many creatures. The more creatures in an encounter, the higher the risk that a lucky streak on their part could deal more damage to the characters than you expect. If your encounter includes more than 2 creatures per character, include fragile creatures that can be defeated quickly. This guideline is especially important for characters of level 1 or 2. It then goes on to discuss adjustments, like if a player is absent, because that happens all the time, right? Oh, my kid's sick. My dog ate my dice. Anyway, but it talks to you about how to amend those certain scenarios. I'm pretty into this approach. I think balancing encounters in D&D has always felt kind of like guesswork and those kind of vibes anyway, so giving DMs a heads up about potential issues is probably way better than confusing them with methods that have never really worked in the first place. One section I actually genuinely love, and that's not me saying I don't genuinely love other sections, but this one's pretty cool. I would like to share it with you again, is monster behavior. I didn't expect this to be in here. Let me find the page. You came here for my singing, right? If you didn't, more fool you. What did I say? Monster behavior. Here we go. The attitudes, motivations, and behavior of the monsters in an encounter help determine how a social interaction plays out and whether it might erupt into combat and influence the course of combat. So this is just because this section essentially it helps you understand how to give enemies these unique personalities early on. And here's an example, particularly with this monster sort of relationships. It goes on to explain here that encounters with groups of monsters can be more interesting if rivalries, hatreds, or attachments exist among the monsters in the group. The death of a much revered leader might throw its followers into a frenzy. On the other hand, a monster might flee. If its hunting companion is killed or mistreated, it might be eager to surrender and betray its boss in return for its life. You can use the monster relationships table below to inspire such relationships within a monster group, and then of course it gives you different examples to go with. It can really lift combat from just rolling dice to something that's just way more memorable. They even provide these handful of like sample adventures built using the chapter's guidelines. It's a practical way to show particularly newer DMs exactly how they might structure their own short adventures. They do this based on levels. I've used this for one-shots, particularly when I'm A, too lazy to homebrew something, or B, run out of time, that kind of thing. And it's just a great way to introduce friends, yes, I have some, to D&D, colleagues, and then something that they can pick up and try themselves too. I'm going to give you an example here of one of the adventures that I have used for level 3 characters. It's called The Winged God. I won't go through the whole thing, I'll just do the situation and the hook. So a few weeks ago, a red dragon wormling drove a band of kobolds out of their warren to claim the place as its lair. Now, some of the kobolds, they're causing trouble in the Cairn Hills. They're raiding merchants, hoping the dragon will allow them to return home as its loyal servants. Now, here's the hook for your players. We've got a merchant here. Now, he's named Nondi Bardux. He's a lawful neutral gnome commoner. He hires you, your party. He hires you, see, I knew you came for my singing, to escort his wagon to the remote mining village of Diamond Lake, which happens to be near the dragon's new lair. Nondi was robbed by kobolds on his last trip, and he wants protection this time. He offers to pay each of you £150. Take it. Go help him. But it's just a great little introduction that you can run as a one-shot, just to really hook people into D&D. Moving on to chapter 5. It's creating campaigns, and this section, is the Bible. I think this chapter is probably the most valuable set of tools in the entire book. It does a really good job at helping new DMs build really good habits early on. There's worksheets included that are pretty useful. It pushes you to just genuinely pay attention to your players' goals, their ambitions, their quirks, their backstories, and it gives you these really neat little character tracker sheets to organize all of that information. Plus, it encourages you to just occasionally design adventures that focus on character details, even suggesting giving them big satisfying moments roughly every sort of 5 levels. Combine this with some really thoughtful prompts for self-check-ins to keep the game engaging, and you've got a really cool toolkit for new DMs to build on. I really like the suggestion that you let players help build the places within your world and help them feel attached to it. The example I'm referencing here, are you ready for my singing? Da, 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 da. Here we go. For example, say you have a peaceful village you plan to feature across several adventures. You hope the characters will connect with the place and treat it as home. As the characters enter the community, they smell something amazing. At this point, you could describe something you think smells good, or you could ask a player. The smell of something amazing, it drifts from around the corner. What is it? Whatever the player's answer, cinnamon rolls from a nearby bakery, firework charges being prepped for a celebration, or anything else, it becomes part of the village and the player has added an important detail to the location. You can use player input whenever you want to pinpoint something meaningful to the characters and their players. Consider asking players questions like these whenever you want to describe something in an impactful way. For example, the tavern owner brings out your favourite dish, cooked to perfection. What's the dish? And what makes this one so remarkable? I just really like this kind of shared storytelling. For me, it's what RPGs should be about. I'm going to mention it one more time. It's gold dust because it just talks you through building a campaign step by step in so much detail. There are even example campaigns inclusive of maps. So we're going to have a look at one now. I need to add though that this is like the D&D canon setting, which some veteran players have complained about. Particularly, they don't like the fact that it's included. But I'm all for getting new players into the hobby, and for me, it just opens the door for someone to run a cool campaign and introduce RPGs to their friends. Then I really don't see the issue. Cry me a river. When I ran my first ever campaign, I gave out way too many magic items. It was like that scene in Bruce Almighty with his yellow post-it notes and they're everywhere, but instead it was me and magic items. The chapter all about treasure, it makes it really clear on what is and isn't appropriate for different players' levels, whilst also going into a lot of detail about various magic items. Few chapters that I'm not going to touch base on, obviously, is the treasures, like I've just mentioned. It kind of is. It does what it says on the tin. It's just magic items and the like. Very, very, very useful, but very boring to talk about. In addition to that, we've got chapter 6, which is cosmology, and then chapter 8, which is bastions. This is because it's a lot, and I feel like it's probably something you look at once you have more experience under the proverbial belt. That being said, I am more than happy to go into it, like I mentioned as well, with Monster Manual, if you feel like it would be of interest to you, but I feel at this point, probably not necessary, probably going to make this video quite confusing. That's what I'm trying to avoid. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what you need. Those are the chapters you need to focus on for your first campaign. Nothing else needs to be said other than that, really. Do people stick around at the end of these videos? I don't know. If you're still here, thank you so much. Please, can I ask you to do all of those things you need to do only one time to support my tiny channel? And I hope to see you in the next video.